Hey friends, I am back for my 1 p.m. Friday Facebook Lives. I took a couple weeks off as I was dealing with some major stress and crises in my life. And you know what I thought about this morning as I was thinking about what I was going to share with you guys today on our topic of healthy sexuality after betrayal? I started thinking that maybe it'd be good if I did a Facebook Live about how to cope and manage your routine, your schedule, all the things that are typically required of you in your life when you're going through a crisis. Like, what do you do? If that is of interest to you, I would love to share about that. The best way that I teach and share is usually from either metaphors or examples from my own life. So I will gladly do a Facebook Live on that if that's of interest. Let me know in the comments. But today we're going to talk about healthy sexuality after betrayal. And because this is a Facebook Live, it's short. I'm not going to go into a lot of details, but what I will say is that inevitably, in a marriage that has been impacted by sexual betrayal, whether it's pornography addiction or crossing the flesh line and having an affair or multiple affairs or prostitutes or whatever with other people, the sexuality in the marriage is inevitably ruptured. And there are lots of different extremes that can happen as a result. And so I am going to say, first of all, that if you're a partner and you're listening to this and you're in the throes of a recent discovery or disclosure, and you would rather take a break from being sexual with your spouse, that is a completely reasonable thing to request for multiple reasons. One is you probably feel very, very unsafe. That's such a standard thing that there's lack of safety in that relationship that's the very first part of the curriculum that I've created for women in the battle is to talk about how to reestablish safety. And boundaries surrounding sex in your marriage is part of that. Now, not every woman wants to, or man, whoever the partner is, not every partner wants to take a break from sex. But if you do, um, I want to encourage you that that is a completely acceptable thing to do while you try to pick up the pieces, figure out the truth of what's going on, and reestablish safety and stability. Finding out things like, was there a flesh line crossed? You can do that through having your partner and yourself tested for STDs. And also, a therapeutic disclosure and a polygraph is a consideration to find out if you know the truth. Because sex in a marriage where there's betrayal or sexual addiction, it can potentially be literally physically dangerous and life threatening, especially if there's diseases involved. So, let me just let you off the hook, give you encouragement and permission to surround yourself with people who know about sexual addiction and sexual betrayal to get advice about what to do about sex, especially if you have a therapist or a Women in the Battle or Men in the Battle group. Because if you ask a lot of well meaning Christians, including people helpers like pastors and therapists, there's a misunderstanding of what sex addiction is all about sometimes. And the thought can easily happen, just have more sex with your spouse and then they won't need the pornography, which actually then casts blame on the partner and shame on the partner and makes that partner feel like, what did I not have that he needed that I wasn't giving him? And so many partners end up trying to go overboard with sexuality, with trying to experiment and all these things. If that's you, let me just say I am so sorry for the pain this is causing you, because what ends up happening from my own experience and from hearing other partners talk is a lot of women end up feeling like sexual surrogates, like used semen receptacles. These are all words and terms I've heard partners use about how they felt trying to be sexual with their spouse after they discovered betrayal. And this is obviously a really unhealthy form of sexuality, and it is out of fear. Now, I'm not shaming you if you're the partner and you're being sexual out of fear to try to get your spouse to stop acting out. I get it. It feels unsafe and you want to try to be safe again. But this is not God's heart for sexuality in a marriage to be used. And the reality is that a lot of times, I'm using men for the sex addict. I realize the genders can be flipped, but the sex addict or the person with the sexual integrity problem often really is using their spouse to act out their fantasies. And so the feeling of being used is sometimes coming as a result of that's really is what's happening. You need to consult with a therapist about how long to abstain, whether that's recommended or not. But there are a lot of couples who do a 90-day reset where they abstain from sexual activity for 90 days. That is not essential, but it is a consideration. And what that does, it helps the sex addict start to rewire their brain to not connect the need to be sexual with, oh, I'm stressed, I need a sexual release, or oh, I feel inadequate, I need a sexual release. And so those pathways that have formed in the brain by the addictive behavior are able to be filled in with other strategies like, oh, I'm feeling stressed, I should call somebody in my group, in my Men in the Battle group, and like connect with them because I'm feeling lonely. Oh, I'm hungry, I'm angry, I'm tired, I need to eat, I need to rest. They learn new coping strategies to deal with the stress and struggles in their life instead of using sex. And because what happens sometimes is the sex addict just puts all their sexual energy on their spouse in an attempt by self-effort to quit acting out, and that puts a tremendous amount of pressure on that spouse who often doesn't want that anyways because they feel so used. Even though if you're the sex addict, even though you're the one with the sexual integrity problem and you might think that's not her problem, if you're bringing that kind of sexual energy to your wife, she can feel it and it makes her feel awful. So some couples can do well by taking a reset, a time off to relearn what healthy sexuality is. Okay, so let me get into that topic. What is healthy sexuality? Sex is God's gift to us. It is a powerful life force, life-giving gift. In the context that God created, it can create new life. It's a bond. It's like super glue for our souls. It is a way to connect. It is a way to share something that you don't share with anybody else. So those are things to consider. And it's when you're thinking about, is this healthy, our sexual relationship? Is it healthy or not? Do you feel like it's mutual? Is the concern about it feeling good there for both spouses, or is it just an attempt to ejaculate? Sex should be connected, not shut down or dissociative. So Dr. Doug Weiss has 3 recommendations. He's a sex addiction expert. 3 recommendations for sex in marriage after betrayal, and that would be to keep your eyes open at least part of the time so that you're looking into each other's eyes and you're staying present. Lights on, even if it's just candles or some kind of dim light, so you can actually see each other and you know that you're present. And then if there's going to be any kind of talking, that it's loving, nurturing talk. Because what happens, especially when there's pornography used by one of the partners, is the sexual preferences get rewired and sex can often become something twisted, dirty, like a primal need. In fact, one of the core beliefs of all sex addicts, based on Dr. Patrick Carn's work, is that sex is their greatest need. Unfortunately, there are even Christian books out there that state that sex is a man's greatest need. I don't see anywhere in scripture that says that. I don't see that as part of God's design. Sex is an important part of a healthy marriage. It needs to be a part of a healthy marriage on whatever level that couple decides between them. Incidentally, there is a sex therapist in Indianapolis who's an awesome Christian man named Philip Swang, and he said, based on research, that the average married couple, has sex once or twice a week. If you're wondering what is healthy, now that's really between you and your spouse. If you want to know kind of what's average, it's once or twice a week. But obviously that can vary because sometimes you have a new baby or somebody has surgery or there's health problems. The other thing that can happen before recovery starts is that sometimes the person with the sex addiction has sexual dysfunction, like porn-induced erectile dysfunction. And the spouse thinks, well, I'm just not enough. Like, I'm not enough for them to have an erection or be aroused by me. They need porn. Therefore, there's something wrong with me. When in fact, all that porn use has rewired their brain to this hyper or need for a hyper stimulus, like something that's over the top. God's design was that you and your spouse would be able to do that for each other, arouse one another, and for a lifetime share that one-on-one connection, a mutual connection. So, if you're the addict watching this, what I'd encourage you to do is remember that sex starts in the kitchen. Have you heard that before? So, if all you're after is, I need sex, I want sex, that is not going to go well in your marriage. If sex is an overflow, like the icing on the cake of your connection with your spouse, your sexual experience with your wife will be so much better. So I'm not saying like go pinch her butt in the kitchen. I mean, not like sexual innuendo, but when I say sex starts in the kitchen, it means like help her cook or clean up. Ask her how her day is. Sit on the couch with her and look into her eyes and ask how she's doing and really listen without trying to fix it. Do some things to try to emotionally connect with your spouse and really show that you care, not just so that you can get sex, but because that is what a true marriage is to be like. If sex is a gift from God designed to point us to our desire and our longing and our oneness with him, then think about that in the context of your desire for sex. Because what happens sometimes when a person has an addiction is that instinct, like we have an instinct to eat, sleep, we have this instinct to be sexual. And when we've acted out over and over again to these hyper normal stimuli like porn, what we end up doing is having this majorly inflated instinct. So we really do believe sex is our greatest need because we've conditioned ourselves that way. But I'm going to tell you this, you need love and belonging and connection with God and with your spouse and with a community far more than you need sex. Nobody has ever died from not having sex. But children who are left alone and not touched and not embraced or held and connected with and nurtured, they die, right? So think of sex as, ask God to help you put sex in its rightful place. And sometimes a period of abstinence when you're trying to work on your recovery, abstinence not just from the acting out, but from sex even in your marriage, can help you reset and replace sex in its proper place in your life and your perspective. So I hope this was helpful to you guys. In the comments, I'd love for you to leave me other topics you'd like me to talk about in future Facebook Lives, and I'll see you again next week.